Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we have our DFS Daily Fantasy Sports, specifically DraftKings show. As always, we will be going over the main slate. That does not include Thursday, Sunday, or Monday Night Football. Also, not the hellacious Jets and Falcons game we decided to send to London for that 9 or 9:30 Eastern Time kickoff. So, not worrying about the Kyle Pitts saga. Hopefully my guy Cordell Patterson goes bonkers, but not in the main slate, so they will not be discussed in this edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. But as always, on this lovely Thursday afternoon, I am joined by none other than PFF analyst Andrew Erickson, who is beginning to be called the prop prophet in some random streets of Cincinnati, and I'm sure throughout other parts of the world. Andrew, how's it going, Mr. 5-1?
What's up, Ian? Yeah, the props have been very profitable for me the past couple of weeks. Can't say the same thing about some of my DFS builds because I've been fading Jalen Hurts in cash games when I should have just been embracing the mobile quarterback that has just is QB1 every single week, no matter what. He just does not fail. Doesn't matter the matchup. Doesn't matter. I need to go back to Jalen Hurts. But yeah, the props have been fun, and I recommend for anyone to go check out prizepicks.com, partnership with PFF, and get in on some of that. You know these players. We know the player usage. You look at Dwayne's report. You look at Ian's work, my work. You know that when props are set too high, when they're set too low, so you can get into it. But I'm excited to get into this DFS slate. We don't have a lot of high projected totals, so I think that it does take a little bit more research to kind of find the best plays, and that's what I felt when I was going through it with my DFS cheat sheet this week. I felt really good about a lot of the things I was able to find out, and I'm happy to talk about them today.
Yeah, 2 of the only 4 games with a game total above 50. Okay, so there's actually 5 games with a game total above 50, but the top 2, Chiefs, Bills, happening on Sunday night, and Seahawks, Rams, happening on Thursday night, as you all probably just saw it. Listen to this on Friday. So great points all around, Andrew. We will kick things off with the question of playing Jalen Hurts in cash. And for those unaware of cash games, we're talking head-to-heads, 50-50s, just games where you're trying to more or less beat one person or finish, just above half the field. Not trying to get too crazy, not worried about ownership percentages, things like that. So, Andrew, I see the allure with Jalen Hurts. He's still at 7,000. I don't think egregiously overpriced. I guess my question is, man, this offensive line, hopefully they get Lane Johnson back this week, but we're still down. 3 starters is looking like either way. We're facing the Panthers defense that, even putting aside the Stephon Gilmore hoopla for a sec, I know they lost that game to the Cowboys, but I think they did prove that this is still at a minimum an average to above average group, particularly with Brian Burns wreaking havoc on the inside. So what makes you want to go to the well this week with Hurts, despite the potential for things to get, messy at that line of scrimmage?
That we have yet to see in Jalen Hurts' NFL career him not finish as a top 12 quarterback when he's not played an entire, when he's played an entire game, he's always been a top 12 guy. QB4, QB10, QB12, QB1, QB11 in his 7 full starts as a starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. He even finished QB20 when he played only half a game and he got taken out in week 17.
The Nate Sudfeld game. We always got to talk about it.
The Nate Sudfeld game. He was still QB20, so he didn't even kill you if you played him. So again, I want the consistency. I want that safe floor, and he has a high ceiling too that we've seen before because of the rushing, and he's been getting it done with a lot of his receivers. Devontae Smith, 7th in the NFL in air yards, 21% target share, so you know how to stack him up with one of his pass catchers in a GPP. So I really like him in both formats, but I started out hot this year with 2 weeks of Jalen Hurts in cash, and then I went away from him, and I'm 0-2 since then. So I'm going right back to the well. If it wasn't broke, I shouldn't have tried to fix it, or else I'm going to get hurt. So I'm going back to Hurts.
Now, we also have the cheapest option of the week is the latest rookie quarterback to land the starting job. Trey Lance. We'll see how the Jimmy G calf thing goes on, but tentatively expecting Trey Lance to be under center. He's on the road in Arizona. We know Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt and company are capable of, again, wreaking some havoc on that defensive line. Now, Andrew, is this a trap, or is this a situation where we can look at Trey Lance scoring, 18.2 or 20.2 fantasy points in a half and just say, hey, whenever a quarterback is going to run the ball 10 plus times, we should roster him in fantasy land?
Yeah, I think that people are hesitant to go in on Trey Lance this week because of what happened with Justin Fields a couple weeks ago, and I get that because, again, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, oh no, am I doing the exact same thing I did 2 weeks ago with Fields? But I think the situations are very different where you have Kyle Shanahan building an offensive game plan around Trey Lance, which the Bears have not decided to do with Justin Fields. Justin Fields isn't running. That was why we liked him, because we thought he was going to run and he didn't run. And that's why he sucked, along with a bunch of other factors. But the surrounding cast, the supporting cast for Trey Lance is just so much better than it is for Justin Fields. It's a better offensive line. He's better offensive skill players. And we've already seen him put up the fantasy numbers. Like, Justin Fields has started 2 games. And I'm pretty sure Trey Lance has more fantasy points combined in one half than Fields has in his 2 starts combined. So we're already seeing the fantasy production. Yes, I get that the Deebo Samuel, he was wide open. It was obviously it's very inflated, but the rushing yards and the second touchdown pass, those were legit. 41 rushing yards, another touchdown pass. So I like Trey Lance still to go here. He's had a full install of the offense in this past week of the game plan potentially around him. 50-point projected total. Again, this isn't the Bears offense where it's just killing. The Bears offense just kills game environment. Like, it's not good for any of the fantasy pieces where, we're still starting Deebo Samuel. We're still starting George Kittle. Like, we're not worried about the offensive skill players. So why wouldn't we have the same type of confidence going back to Trey Lance? So I think at 5,700, he makes a lot of sense. He opens up a ton of things. And I think the process was right about Justin Fields. It just didn't work out. So yeah. I don't think that we should over-evaluate, kind of look at what that field situation was like, because I think that this is different, and that's why I like going back to him with the 49ers. And the Cardinals, you look at their weaknesses, it's really against the run. Like, they've been really bad against running backs, just giving up a ton of rushing yards. They've been much better against the pass. So which quarterback would you rather have? You'd rather have Trey Lance, a rushing quarterback. So he might actually do it a lot with his legs and not his arm. And that's actually why, as I get into my prop picks for this week, I'm taking some Trey Lance under in the passing yard department.
And we just got an update that Jimmy Garoppolo is sitting once again on Thursday. So not expecting him to start come Sunday. I guess my only question here with our cash build, Andrew, is like, spoiler alert, we could have a ton of potential salary saving options with the Washington football team. We got that defense at 2,200. We got Ricky Seals-Jones with Logan Thomas out of the picture at the stone cold minimum 2,500 at tight end. And we can even go back the well with Curtis Samuel. Hasn't been practicing this week, but we have heard Ron Rivera say they just want to manage him, and he had 4 targets and like 25 snaps last week. So if we want to do, the holy trifecta of Washington cheap players this week, I think we can get all the way up to Kyla Murray, man. I don't even know that we need to necessarily stack him with anyone. But Kyler is by far the number 1 quarterback on the slate in terms of projection, and he's the highest priced. But again, just based on some of these early builds, I haven't had that much of a problem getting up to Kyler and still getting Henry and still getting Devontae Adams, thanks to all the salary that we're saving with those other guys. So I understand. I do think those are the 3 ones we should be focusing on: Hurts, Lance, and Kyler. They provide the most rushing upside of the slate. No offense, Danny Dimes. And I think that we should love them accordingly in cash. Now, what about for GPP? Because we aren't forgetting about Danny Dimes. I know you want to talk a little Daniel Jones, Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, but pick your favorite potential tournament build right now.
Yeah, I like Tom Brady a lot, and I know I just saw him beat my Patriots in a nail biter on a missed field goal. And Belichick, come on, man, like, go for it, dude. Put the ball in Mac Jones' hands, win the game. I think we're going to lose anyway if they gave the ball back to Brady. But I digress. I just like Tom Brady in this matchup. I think that the Miami... So something I kind of noticed about last week, if you look at the top 6 quarterbacks in terms of fantasy points scored, they only played in 3 games. So it was basically like, if you finish as a top 5 quarterback, the guy on the other side also finished as a top 5 quarterback, because that's just kind of how we saw the quarterback scoring kind of play out. So is this me touting Jacoby Brissette as oh my God, like, this guy can finish as a top 5 quarterback? Well, maybe he can. Like, we look at this Bucs defense, and it's the worst. Like, everyone just throws on them nonstop. We know Jacoby Brissette can run a little bit. So I just think that Jacoby Brissette from the Miami Dolphins side can keep things at least interesting for Tom Brady and company, who basically throw no matter what. It doesn't matter. They don't really run the football. They're a very pass-heavy offense. And I think Brady, again, after 2 kind of lull games where he didn't do much, he only threw 1 touchdown pass his past 2 games, where he threw 9 to start the year. Again, the 9 was a lot, so we knew it was going to come down, and 1 is just probably too little. Like, he's going to eventually kind of medium out of his touchdown passes, and he still has all the weapons. I'm not afraid of this Miami defense. I mean, he should have 4.7 passing touchdowns over the past 2 weeks. He only has 1, like I mentioned. So he's overdue for some positive regression in the touchdown department. In Miami, they do have good cornerbacks, but the thing with them is they've actually allowed the second most receptions of 20-plus air yards this year, and Brady leads the NFL in PFF passing grade on deep ball pass attempts. So I like Brady to just kind of have a bounce-back game again, getting this Patriots game out of the way. I think it was an emotional toll on him for sure, and I think that's why we just didn't necessarily see him put up these monster gaudy numbers like he had done, against the Falcons and Cowboys. I think it's really a get-right spot at home against Miami, and it's just easy to figure out, okay, you stack him with Mike Evans and Antonio Brown. Like, you don't need to worry about him rushing touchdowns necessarily. Like, it's very easy to stack him, and I think that he's priced appropriately where he won't be super, super popular. So I like Tom Brady against the Dolphins.
I think there might be ways with him, too, to make it still fairly contrarian. We'll always see the rostership percentages kind of even out as the week goes on, but Antonio Brown at just 5,200 is a natural, easy stacking partner. Rob Gronkowski, if he didn't play Sunday night, I'd be shocked if they kind of rush him back this week. So Cameron Brate at 3,300 is viable. And yeah, just fading the idea that these cornerback matchups are going to cause any real problems. You can certainly get up to Mike Evans. I think Goblin is probably the one you definitely want to attach to him. He should be the most well set up in this spot from the friendly confines of the slot. But I like it, Andrew, and I have two picks that are going off to kind of the same general strategy of let's get off one of the chalkiest running backs on the slate, which is Leonard Fournette, with the passing game. So why not do the same thing with the other two chalkiest running backs on the slate, Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook? Let's go get us some Ryan Tannehill and some Kirk Cousins, especially if A.J. Brown's back for Ryan Tannehill, who remains PFF's third highest graded passer of the season. When you're throwing balls to Josh Reynolds and he's dropping touchdowns and deep balls, then you got Nick Westbrook, we still don't know his full last name, and Chester Rogers and all these other guys, man. Life isn't that easy. But now we get to play the freaking Jaguars. And I understand Derrick Henry could just go off for 600 yards and the Titans throw the ball 5 times. But again, when we're trying to take down hundreds of thousands of contestants in this field, this is a chance to leverage all those people going in on Henry and maybe getting off. So maybe Henry just has a terrible game, like 120 yards and no touchdowns, just really lets people down. Tannehill, AJB, even Anthony Ferkser, guys like that could help us out. It might just be Tannehill and AJB, and you don't even need to get all that messy with the other guys. Hopefully, Brown's Wednesday return to practice is a sign that he will be active this week. And then with Kirk Cousins, it's the same thing where Dalvin Cook will be playing this week, seemingly, but he's also saying he's still playing through the pain. So last week we saw him basically pull himself out halfway through. I understand going to the well with Dalvin, but if our rostership percentages are right now, showing that Dalvin is expected to have the second highest ownership of anyone other than Derrick Henry, let's go to Kirk Cousins, let's go to Jefferson, let's go to Thielen. Our wide receiver cornerback matchups page, which is you can find on PFF.com. It can get as complicated as you want, or you can literally just have the wide receiver, their primary matchup, and their grade. Two of the top 3 grades of the week, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So don't be afraid to go to the skies when everyone is going to the ground in these contests. Let's stick with the running back group, Andrew, because we've already kind of spelled it out a little bit. In cash, you're paying up for Derrick Henry. He's getting these receptions. There's maybe A.J. Brown to throw the ball to, and that's about it. We're also going down to Leonard Fournette at 5,200. Even if Giovanni Bernard is back, man, Gio's only out there in pure no huddle and 2-minute situations. We're still looking at 15 to 20 touches for Lenny Fournette against a Dolphins defense that, we took advantage of last week with Jonathan Taylor in the prop game. We also seen Damian Harris and the Bills guys have plenty of success against Miami. So I think we're all good on Henry and Fournette. Who are you trying to fill out the rest of your cash game lineup with, though, at the running back position in that flex spot?
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of looking at some of the pass catching backs. So it's kind of, I'm looking at DeAndre Swift and Damian Williams as potential guys to kind of fill in that third running back slot. I'm just looking for a running back that I know is going to be working in the passing game. I think salary's loose enough this week where you can kind of get around and you can probably find the money to pay up for DeAndre Swift, which you're not even really paying up. He's the RB3 this season so far, or he's in the top 5, and Swift is 6,100. Derrick Henry is +8, or is over 8,000. Eckler's up in the high tier 7K range, and I can get a guy with a great skill set for DraftKings PPR scoring. Guys, DeAndre Swift catches so many freaking passes that he's foolproof in this format. So I love his usage that he got last week. I know Dwayne has highlighted it a lot in his utilization report, but the snap share went up. His routes run rate per dropback nearly doubled from week 3 up to 71%. Jamal Williams was not running nearly as many routes anymore. Swift played at 73% snap share, was a season high, and the Vikings defense sucks. It's not good. It's ranked 31st in rushing yards allowed before contact per attempt, which is huge for Swift because, Ian, as you pointed out in your handy-dandy chart, DeAndre Swift's not getting a lot of yards after contact. So Minnesota Vikings are giving up the most before contact, so that's a plus for DeAndre Swift. Again, you're not playing him for the rushing necessarily, but it is another bonus to his profile that he's going to pick up some yards on the run, and he's still operating near the goal line. Like, he's in working near getting goal line touches, getting goal line reception. So again, Jamal Williams, yes, is there always a chance he sneaks one in? Of course, but still, I think DeAndre Swift is still viewed as the starter. I mean, Swift is third in expected fantasy points per game this season, and that's really more predictive than just looking back at last week and be like, oh, well, Jamal Williams started, and like that's not enough for a reason to get off Swift. I played Swift last week, didn't work out. But yeah, things change very, very quickly, and I think he's in for a big game. In, like you mentioned, like this is kind of like one of those ugly shootout games where it's like they're just two bad defenses. So it's like, well, the offenses have to move the ball. Hopefully, I know the Vikings dudded out last week, so hopefully they can push the envelope a little bit with the Detroit Lions, and that's why I like Swift.
Yeah, I think you've sold me on, like, we don't even need to really go all the way up to Najee or Zeke there. Just take the discount and go down to Swift. I mean, RB3 in expected points is bonkers.
Yeah, he's just so. I mean, it's basically. I mean, he is what we used to like about Alvin Kamara. He's basically what happens. Like, now Kamara has basically turned into like a mini Derrick Henry where he just runs the ball in between the tackles all the time. It's like, yeah, like great. Kamara's like 20 carries every single week, but it's like, no, like we don't want that. so yeah, I mean, Swift is just the usage is too good.
I was going to say the chart you mentioned for people not sure what you're talking about. I basically just took missed tackles forced per carry on the x-axis and then yards after contact per rush on the y. Two stats that attempt to figure out, a running back's kind of true ability independent of their offensive line. In the run game, Swift has been awful in the run game this year. Like, pick a stat, any stat, he's been in the bottom 5, and he is on, the bottom left of this, of the axis in the chart. So it hasn't been good for him on the ground, but it doesn't matter because we're playing on a full point per reception site in a matchup that features the Lions as a touchdown, road underdog. Yeah, he's going to be fine getting those receptions. I do love making those charts though, Andrew, because it's simple. It's two variables that I put in Excel, and I don't need to pretend like I'm doing all this craziness in R to make a freaking chart. You can do some awesome stuff with R. I had to use it a lot in college in my statistics class. Like, there's some really cool stuff you can do behind the scenes, but too often I see people going through all this trouble to set up R and to get your fancy little logos on there, and then you're just comparing like yards per carry on one axis and yards after contact per carry on another. Like, why are you going through all these hoops? Just try to make yourself look smarter with a chart that you can make in Excel in probably half the time. So that's just my rant, and I'm sure a bunch of the fellow fans
work smarter, not harder.
I gotta keep some of our own honest sometimes, Andrew. I get tired of some of the nerdness out there in our industry just taking overboard sometimes. So please don't be too mad at me. It's Thursday. We're having a good time here. But yeah, so I would say Henry, Fournette, and then I'm with you on DeAndre Swift probably filling that out. We just don't need to get all the way up to Najee. Hyde is practicing in full this week, so we're off James Robinson, at least, being someone to build a cash game lineup around. And yeah, I also see Damian Williams listed. I would like to wait and see there if he's going to be super chalky this week. Like, I think he's going to have the 80% snap roll, but hey, Khalil Herbert's pretty good. You never know what could happen there. Let's talk a little GPP here, though. I have a couple guys that I'm really liking, all kind of in that 5.5 to 6K range. It seems like this week people want to get all the way up to Derrick Henry, and then we got enough guys, in that 6K range between Robinson and Swift and Zeke and Najee that I think going just a little bit beneath that could open up some value because everyone wants Fournette, everyone wants Damian Williams. Let's split up right down the middle and look at guys like Josh Jacobs, home favorite, in a spot where he's expected to now be the full-time featured back, which is great to see. Peyton Barber, I did not realize that he was hurt in the beginning of that game, but he is, and now he's out. So it's Drake and Jacobs again. We'll monitor Jalen Richard, apparently, return to practice and stuff, and see if he ends up being active. I'm cautiously hoping that when they made Kenyon Drake one of the highest paid backups in the league, that meant that Richard's not going to be stealing those sort of snaps. Assuming that Jacobs and Drake are the top two guys. Like, look what happened last week, man. 18 combined carries and targets in a game that the Raiders were trailing for like 2 touchdowns the entire time. So with Jacobs, to me, it's never been an issue about his like ability with the ball in his hands. We just wanted them to throw the ball to him more often, and they did that last game. So 1 week sample, but that's why we have a chance to get Jacobs as a home favorite, as a workhorse, at a fraction of the ownership that he would be at if he had actually had a great game on Monday night. So all in on Jacobs this week. And I also think going up a little bit more, if McCaffrey is out, to Chuba Hubbard at just 6K. Like, it's just everyone's new flavor of the week, Andrew. And we're all going down to Damian Williams, even though what we saw last week out of Chuba was pretty good. No, he didn't get the full-fledged McCaffrey or even like Mike Davis role. We had too much Rodney Smith in the passing game. But that was also a game that featured Carolina down 2 or 3 touchdowns in the third quarter. Like, Chuba is now at home against an Eagles team that I think the Panthers are a lot better than, to be quite frank. So Chuba getting off the chalk here, James Robinson, I think makes sense. And hey, even if it's, 15 to 20 touches instead of 25 to 30 that maybe we were hoping for, again, that's why he's available at 6K, and that's why not everyone is on him as highly as we would think of. And my last point would be your guy, Andrew, at least your team's guy, Damian Harris at 5,500. I know we have 4 starting linemen not practicing right now, not ideal. We'll see, though. As we know, the Patriots injury report, it's just a joke to try to figure that out before actives and inactives come out. But like Damian Harris last week sets season high marks in snaps and routes, and he runs for -4 yards because they didn't even try to run against the Buccaneers. I saw a cool stat in our handy dandy PFF Ultimate stuff earlier this week, where we actually have for run defense, every team's like the average like yard line, basically past the line of scrimmage, where they're meeting an opponent's running back. Easily, by far, the 2 best teams in the league at stopping opposing running backs, like just before they can even get started, the Saints and the Buccaneers. And that's been like a multi-year thing. These 2 teams are awesome at stopping the run. Unfortunately, that's who Damian Harris has had to play over these past 2 weeks. So I know Brandon Bolden's been getting a few more targets, but hey, this is the week where we should see Damian Harris getting to work with the lead against a Houston Texans defense that I think has played a little better than expected so far, but certainly not a group I'm afraid of. Damian Harris this week, people. Stack them with the Patriots defense. You can stack all these guys with their defenses, which is another great part, because that's just so correlated between a running back getting up on the scoreboard, continuing to get fed into the fourth quarter, and their defense making a lot happen. So I think Chuba and that Panthers defense, Damian and the Patriots defense, and who was the other guy I talked about? Yeah, the other guy I was talking about, Josh Jacobs and the Raiders defense, I think are all great in GPP. Andrew, I like your picks as well. Saquon Barkley, Chase Edmonds, Kenneth Gainwell. Talk to me about why you like these guys in tournaments.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with you on the Damian Harris one. I was really surprised that he was coming up so low in the rostership. I guess I was like, dude, like Texans this is the matchup you want. Like, we know he's a good running back. Like, he's graded so well for PFF, and he just had the 2 worst matchups you could asked for the last 2 weeks. So I love going back to Damian Harris in a positive game script, which the Patriots have not had in the last 2 weeks. So my running back, so Saquon Barkley, again, he looks like he's back to full force. 87% snap share last 2 weeks, 25.5 fantasy points per game, 21 touches per game. And the biggest thing I'm trying to do with my DraftKings lineups is I need my running backs to catch passes. Like, I need those receptions. Like, you get such a bonus and boost from guys that are involved in the passing game that you don't necessarily need them to score a touchdown. It's like, oh, if they have 6 catches, boom, that's the same as like a touchdown would be. And the one thing that I've just always gravitated towards in DFS and in season-long leagues is, Dan Quinn defenses, right? Yeah. Bleed receptions to running backs. It's been like this since like 2014. Like, whether he was with Seattle, whether he's with Atlanta, doesn't matter. No matter what, they always give up receptions, receiving yards to running backs. And of course, Dallas Cowboys have allowed the most receptions to running backs this season. And that's not even factoring in how the Bengals don't rank first in that, because they gave up like 14 receptions in one game to Najee Harris. And yet, Big D and Dallas Cowboys are still giving up more receptions to the running back position. We're seeing Saquon Barkley be heavily involved. He's running routes at one of the highest rates at the running back position per Daniel Jones dropback. So we're going to continue to see him be peppered with targets. So I just absolutely love Saquon Barkley. He looks back like he's a guy that can break a slate. Like, we know that he has that ability, and I think he's still just underpriced in the 7K range. Like, when we were doing season-long rankings, like, I had no problem ranking him ahead of Derrick Henry and ahead of like these top guys. That's why it's just that the slow start out of the gates has kind of just like made us slow to readjust our perception about Barkley. It's like, no, like, he is a top 5 running back. Like, I moved him back in the top 5 for this weekend. It's like, man, like that feels good. Like he's back, and I'm super excited. And I just think you want to get on him now while he's still, where people are still kind of reacting to, like, oh, is he like back all the way? Like, oh, the Giants offensive line kind of sucks. Like, guys, like the Giants offense is like not been bad. Like it's been really good. And you look at, especially considering, Daniel Jones only plays, like he's only played really tough opponents, and he's played really well in all of them except the Falcons. Of course, the one game I'm like in on Daniel Jones, he like has like a mediocre performance, and every other game he's been over 20 fantasy points. So he's just been playing much better than I think a lot of people anticipated. And Barkley's obviously seeing some of that as well for his performance. So I do like Saquon Barkley. My other guys that I mentioned, I'm just trying to find them here. Oh, it was Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds, yes. So Arizona Cardinals running back. I mean, he just hasn't scored. Like he has 395 scoreless offensive yards from scrimmage. So he's averaging almost 100 yards per game, receptions and rushes combined. He just hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Like James Conner has like 5 touchdowns. Like, okay. But the touchdown variance is eventually going to work into this running back's favor, into Chase Edmonds' favor sooner rather than later. Again, he's RB13 overall in PPR scoring. I love the dual threat receiving, rushing. The 49ers have allowed the 8th most fantasy points to running backs this season. Look, we want parts of this Cardinals offense. And realistically, Edmonds' target share is so high. It's like almost as high as like Hopkins and AJ Green. So it's like we're trying to figure out which of these receivers to pair with Kyla Murray. It's like, why don't you just pair him with the pass-catching running back who has like 4 targets in every single game this year? Like his role has been so consistent, and he's looked so explosive. I mean, he had a really nice run basically from like the 1 yard line in last week's game, and it probably would have been a touchdown if he had not been at the 1 yard line. So he's just running cold when it comes to touchdowns. So I think Chase Edmonds still under 6K is just, he's on the best offense in the NFL, and he's just got so much explosive upside. And then Kenneth Gainwell is my last guy, and really it's kind of just trying to chase what happened with Cordell Patterson last week. Cordell Patterson was at 4,900 last week, and I kind of highlighted him in the draft sheet, in the DFS cheat sheet last week, because like, guys, like he's at 7 targets the last 2 weeks. Like his target rate per route run is like off the charts. And no, I did not expect him to score 3 touchdowns, but I was like, yeah, he's like a nice piece that can let you do a lot with your lineup. And I think Kenneth Gainwell's kind of in that same fashion. I mean, his touches are basically equal with Miles Sanders. He's 11 targets over the last 2 weeks. So I really think that he could be someone that you can use. And again, the receiving ability, like that's what we're looking for here. And he's shown that, he has a really high target rate per route run too. It's 29%. So it's not as high as Patterson's, but it's the same kind of like archetype that Patterson has with the Falcons, where Kenneth Gainwell, no, he's not an every down player, but when he's on the field, he's getting featured touches. We've seen him take goal line touches. So again, with Miles Sanders, just his role not increasing at all, and it's basically decreasing in favor of Kenneth Gainwell. I think that he's kind of like a sneaky guy that you can get really cheap that has the upside that a Patterson has, that he could find himself 2 touchdowns because he catches a long pass, takes a screen to the house, because we know he has that ability.
One thing we do need to talk about with the running backs here, Christian McCaffrey has come out and said that he feels great, and he definitely has a chance to play Sunday. McCaffrey is sitting at 8,700, 300 beneath Derrick Henry, still a little bit more expensive than Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook. Andrew, obviously, we're not squeezing him in the cash game lineups. If he's healthy, there's just too much. Hey, is he going to be limited? What's going to go on? Risks like that. With that said, though, tournaments could be interesting. Again, it all depends on how kind of the projections are working out and things like that. But last year, like they said they were going to ease him back in. They did to an extent. He played low for him, 71% snaps. Also had 18 carries and 10 targets. Now, I know not every injury is created equal. That was him coming off the IR. It wasn't him, suffering this injury 2 weeks ago. But, like, we've seen this team, we've seen the Vikings do it before, like, when your number one running back that you're paying $60+ million is back and ready to go, they tend to feed him pretty quick. Going to McCaffrey, if he's just, people are fading him being back, man, in tournaments, it might be one of the lowest ownership spots to get a chance at McCaffrey all season long.
Yeah, I think it makes really sense to just, if the field is off McCaffrey, then you need to be all over him. Like, you got to think about, less about trying to be right and think about, okay, if I'm right, how much can I profit off this? So if you're right about McCaffrey and people are wrong about him, and you're on CMC when he's back to his full workload at a low rostership, which never ever happens, then yeah, I think that makes tons of sense. So yeah, I'll definitely be playing a lot of McCaffrey if he is active for week 5.
And also, people, you make sure you tune in to our show. Friday night, gets released Friday night or Saturday morning, but we're always live Friday afternoons, I think 4 p.m. ET. So by night, I meant about 3 hours earlier than that, where we go over all the injuries and what it means, because someone like Chase Edmonds, who did not practice with a shoulder injury, could be an issue. And we'll talk about James Conner, pivots, what to do in season long, and all that. So make sure you check that out. Myself, Andrew, and Mr. Dwayne McFarland every single week. Now let's go wide receivers, Andrew. I think there's a lot of directions to go in cash. We mentioned Curtis Samuel before. Only $3K, had the 4 targets and 25 snaps. Need to see how healthy he's going to be. But behind, with Logan Thomas now out too, there's just only so many guys for Heineke to throw the ball to. Terry will get his, but Curtis at 3K is just such a steal. And then Laviska Shenault at 4.8K. I love that call by yourself. More air yards without DJ Chark in the lineup. We already got Bevell saying that, hey, he will be more involved in the offense, as he should be. Like, I'm already annoyed, Andrew, at the future victory laps that are going to come out about, I told you guys to draft Laviska all off season. Why didn't you listen to me? Because the guy needed 3 guys to get injured before he got this role dropped into his lap. But whatever.
Running pure.
Running pure. It's the way things are now. We will look at the new information and adjust accordingly. At 4.8K, man, I just think he is great, and he'll get, 6-7 target floor. We might actually have a semblance of upside these days. I am trying to get up to Davante Adams at 8.2K. Again, I think if we can get Curtis, if we can get RSJ in that Washington defense, there's enough room. And to see people trying to chase those Randall Cobb touchdowns, we've been making fun of one of my buddies all week in our home league who spent $17 on Randall Cobb, and we're like, why, man? Why would you do that? Do you think Davante Adams is going to have 60 scoreless yards every week? What the hell, Mike? But anyway, Davante, I think you can get up to, at only 82K, I don't even think it's that bad, and his projection is just so much higher than any other receiver. Gotta love being able to get that. Diontae Johnson, I think, makes sense in cash or GPPs at just 6,500. I was just looking at the 6K mark and all the receivers above it, and I was like, who should have the most targets out of all these guys? Davante Adams, Diontae Johnson, maybe DJ Moore, who I think is a fine candidate as well. But for me, if I can get Davante and Diontae, that's great. You sold me on DeAndre Swift, which I appreciate, because I was having trouble getting Davante and Diontae, and then also getting up to Najee. So probably having 2 Steelers was a bad idea to begin with. So Davante, Diontae, and getting down to Swift, I think makes a lot of sense. And again, Laviska at 4.8K. I did notice you had a Higgins on here. Are we talking Richard or a returning T?
Oh, returning T. And
okay, thank God.
No, yeah. So it's interesting because when I looked at, and this is something people that are listening, if you're a subscriber, PFF Edge subscription, you can use our DFS optimizer. And the cool thing that it does, not even if you're trying to enter 150 lineups or whatever, but it pulls in the projections and it gives you a value score. So you can actually sort by best values based on salary and based on the PFF projection. And, I had Laviska Shenault and T. Higgins as my 2 cash plays initially, and then I checked the value plays, and it was like, oh, the top 2 wide receivers are Laviska Shenault and T. Higgins. So I was like, all right, I'm doing the right thing. I'm following the right steps. The process is sound. And with T. Higgins, it's going back to the first 2 weeks of the season. 28% target share. He was the clear alpha in that offense. And it's funny because even in the second game, Jamar Chase caught a long touchdown. It was on the one play that T. Higgins was not on the field. I thought it was just really, really interesting. Then when T. Higgins came back in the game, he caught a touchdown. So I think Higgins, as the cheapest Bengals wide receiver, I think is egregious, and I think that's why he just pops in our projection model, and I think he's just a really, really great play, especially now that the Packers are not going to have Jair Alexander. They're not going to have their stud cornerback, so there's going to be no Jair Alexander Island in Green Bay, and I think Joe Burrow is going to be able to dice. I think Joe Burrow is actually kind of a sneaky good tournament play as well, because he's been just on fire these last 2 weeks, and that's been without T. Higgins. So I think we could see a ceiling game from Burrow, especially if Joe Mixon is banged up, and I think that benefits T. Higgins, who is just the easiest guy to put into lineups.
The only thing with T and all these Bengals receivers, and that's been our only kind of hesitation with them throughout this year, will the Bengals finally start passing? It would make sense if this week, without Joe Mixon, against a Packers defense that is banged up in the secondary and in the second highest game total on the entire main slate, that Burrow and company start to sling the rock a little bit more. So Like that call. And yeah, going right to tournament plays, I do think Jamar Chase makes a lot of sense at 5.8K for all the reasons you just listed out. Like, God forbid, man, if we could get Joe Burrow 40 pass attempts in a game instead of like over the past 2 weeks combined, the ceiling is the roof for all these guys. So Chase, Higgins, Boyd, they all make sense. I mean, honestly, maybe the move is just to stack Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams and then just run it back with any one of these wide receivers on the Bengals side of the ball. So there's going to be a lot of points in that Green Bay-Cincy game. One of these ones where I already went and checked the weather in Cincy on Sunday. We're looking clear.
Yes.
No wind, no rain. Things are fine. I'm not falling the drought trap there. Boots on the ground. I'm going outside, put my finger up in the air, making sure we're good there. Things seem fine. So yeah, Jair Alexander has not been practicing and is not expected to play. Even Kevin King is limited with a concussion. And like if Kevin King comes back, that's probably a positive for everyone. So yes, looking good for all these Bengals receivers. I agree with you. Henry Ruggs, 5.6K. He is getting 1 to 3 deep shots down the field per week. And if he hits one, it's probably going to be enough to really meet his value and potentially swing your way into the top tier of a tournament. So with you on Henry Ruggs, just a little too cheap there. I will say, if we want to get gross, if you want to avoid the potentially more chalky Curtis Samuel, there is one other 3K receiver that is a full-time player now that nobody seems to care about. And his name, Andrew, is Tavon Austin going up against a horrendous Titans secondary. I know this is not for the faint of heart here. Like if you just want to ignore this, I wouldn't blame you. But he came in, played over 70% of the snaps last week after DJ Chark suffered that fractured ankle. Now he's had an entire week with the first team offense. A lot of people are going to be on Laviska Shenault, maybe going up to Marvin. Hey man, weird things have happened. I know Tavon is more seen as more of a gadget guy, but it's Urban Meyer. Who the hell knows how he views Tavon Austin at this point? So if you just want a cheap guy that's at least going to be on the field a lot, I do think Tavon Austin can supply that for you if you got, the stomach for these kind of things. But Andrew, what's it all come down to? Comes down to when you can roster a guy that just saw 8 targets, that's from your hometown, that you've been trying to talk up for the last 6 months. Go off. It's Deonta Harris week. Tell me why.
Deonta Harris, again, if you guys have been listening to the podcast for a while, Deonta Harris was one of my favorite sleepers entering the 2021 season, and Marquez Callaway, stole the headlines in the preseason, but so far during the regular season, where everything actually counts, Deonta Harris has actually been the most productive wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. I know that this passing game has been mediocre at best. It's not been great, but Harris has been the guy. He's commanded the highest share of targets, air yards, in the Saints offense, and he had a 30% target share last week. His 42% target rate per route run was second among all players, and the matchup is there. The Washington football team has just been atrocious against opposing wide receivers, third most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Again, the target share numbers are obviously inflated because they just don't throw a lot. They have not been throwing a lot, but he's their short, speedy guy. Jameis Winston has hit him deep, surprisingly already. And it's funny because when you look at the PFF wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, you have Adams, Jefferson, Thielen, and then number 5 is Deonta Harris coming in.
I was laughing at that this week when I saw it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's funny because it's no one's talking about Deonta Harris. I understand that, but I mean everything is there. The peripherals are there, the target share, air yards, all the things that we talk about of hey, this is why you should start X player in DFS. They all line up for Deonta Harris again. So again, you're really just the uphill battle is could it be Marquez Callaway week? Okay, yeah, that's in play, but it's so far everything has been showing us that it should be Deonta Harris, and he's cheap, and he's one of these 5% or lower rostered guys that I think can really make a difference in one of your GPP lineups. So I like Deonta Harris. The matchup's there, targets are, air yards are there. So yeah, I like Deonta Harris, and he's my guy. So I have to obviously talk about him.
Hey, no, I mean, it's adding up this week. If there is a week to play Deonta Harris, it is this one. Final note here, you got Justin Jefferson listed. Absolutely. Again, this Vikings offense going just away from the potential Dalvin Cook chalk, I think makes a lot of sense. Not a ton to go over here with tight end. I think we can go all the way down to Ricky Seals-Jones and Cash, man. Again, we almost kind of fell into Will Dissly. I know he's had these better weeks, but he's not exactly this, athletic specimen. You can have the Jack Doyle type traps, Ricky Seals-Jones is a legit high-end tight end. I'm old enough to remember a couple years ago people listing his over 3 yards per route run, metric from a lightly used season, and just wondered hey, what could this guy be with a complete role? After Logan Thomas hurt his hamstring last week, he's now in IR. Ricky Seals-Jones did not leave the field. Washington takes these, they got our former collegiate quarterback in Logan Thomas. They got a perceived, almost like a wide receiver turned tight end, Ricky Seals-Jones. And they show no freaking problem giving these guys true 100% snap rolls. And then they have a former collegiate wide receiver in Antonio Gibson, and they're like, no, over 60% snaps in this economy? Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. So that's just something that kind of pisses me off about the situation. But hey, at least we now got RSJ at only 2,500. I guess we could try to get up to Waller, Andrew. There's also Tyler Conklin sitting there at, I believe, 3,300, as you mentioned. Are you cool with RSJ and cash, or do you feel like it's a trap?
Well, I thought, I was going to come on here and just bring the flames on RSJ, but I was afraid you were going to try to cool me off. So I'm glad that you're on them.
No, we're good. We're good.
All right, sweet. So yeah, go back to RSJ. I was afraid that I was going too deep. I know that I always talk about the sub 3K tight ends on this podcast, so I was afraid you were going to try to hold me back. But no, Ricky Seals-Jones, his routes rate per dropback went from 3% to 81% in week 4. So that's all I'm looking for. If you look at the tight ends the last couple weeks that have broken out, CJ Uzomah, Dawson Knox, they were all in that 77%, 70 to 80%, routes run per dropback rate. And that's exactly what we saw from Ricky Seals-Jones. So it worked. The process was sound, but those guys, it worked out. They finished as the tight end 1 and tight end 2, respectively. People were like, Uzomah, how did he do this? I was like, guys, he's running routes every time Joe Burrow drops back. So, that's what leads to production, and that's going to lead to production for Ricky Seals-Jones. So, yes, I feel confident going down to him. The only reason I really mentioned Waller is just because I think that he has a ceiling at tight end that probably no one else on this slate can probably offer it, just because he's the alpha wide receiver on his offense. He's a 23% target share, which is the highest among all tight ends, even higher than Travis Kelce, because Kelce's kind of been down the last 2 weeks. So I think that because there are so many pay down options, like I mentioned, Conklin is a guy you can pay down for. The Patriots tight ends are available in a good matchup against Houston. I think it's going to be more of a contrarian build to actually pay up for Darren Waller, Kittle, Hawkinson. So that's kind of how I would approach it. But from a cash perspective, yeah, just punt RSJ, baby.
RSJ. No, last week, I agree with you on Disley after I found out that Gerald Everett was on the COVID list. So it just kind of depends how things fall. On the surface, if it was RSJ and Logan Thomas was healthy, yeah, it'd be a little bit more of a problem. In tournaments, another injury to monitor. Everyone's favorite backup tight ends, whose last name we can't pronounce, Albert O. He was been out of practice with a hamstring injury, so Noah Fant. All wheels up against the Steelers if that ends up happening. Teddy Bridgewater is coming back as a limited participant on Thursday. So as much as I love my guy, Drew Lock's entertaining style of play, I do understand he is not exactly the guy we want under center in Fantasyland. Talk to me, Andrew, though, about the guy that you have dubbed just sicko mode. I'm not sure if you invented that. If you did, hat tip to you, my friend.
Mike Gesicki, dude. I like him a lot this week. Again, he's under 4.5K, so he's in that middle tier of tight end, so not a player that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards, because most people would either just pay up for Kelce or just pay down to the cheapest option, which in this case is RSJ. I already talked about liking the Tom Brady side of the offense on the Bucs, so I think that if you're looking for bring back options, there are a lot of great ones on Miami. So if you don't want to play Cameron Brate, you can play Mike Gesicki instead. He has 18 targets over the past 2 weeks, 13 fantasy points per game with Jacoby Brissette under center. Tampa Bay has allowed the third most fantasy points to tight ends this season. So I think that Gesicki, along with Devontae Parker, is the other guy I like as a primary bring back option in these Bucs stacks, because that's my favorite stack. So I like Tom Brady and his receivers, so I want to bring it back, wrap it around with one of these Dolphins players. And Gesicki, with Jacoby Brissett, has been a legitimate tight end 1. So, and we know that he's really used more as a wide receiver. So he has one of the higher ceilings at the tight end position, because he's not just running 5 yards downfield and turning around. He's actually running downfield routes. And if the Dolphins are going to throw in this game, which they probably will, because no team can run and they have Malcolm Brown as their starting running back, so they're going to have to throw a ton. And I think Gesicki could have a lot of fantasy points in this matchup. So, yeah, Gesicki mode.
Yeah, so I guess my only quote-unquote, it's not a beef with Gesicki, it's why is this guy still even being called a tight end? It's not more as a wide receiver, Andrew. He is a wide receiver. He's played 9 snaps as an inline tight end this year. Taysom Hill, who we mocked the tight end usage for him, has played 24. So if you think Taysom Hill being called a tight end is ridiculous, which it is, you should be 3 times as upset that Mike Gesicki is getting that treatment. But that's just, some sour milk that I'd like to enjoy continuing to bring up. Quickly here on the defenses, Washington football team, the easiest salary saver at 2,200. And then from there, man, again, people, these GPP running back stacks just go so well with their defenses. We can do Damian Harris and the Patriots, Chuba Hubbard and the Panthers, Josh Jacobs and the Raiders. I think the Raiders won against Justin Fields, where, let's face it, a lot of running around, potential to have some turnovers, not exactly at home facing the Lions again, could go south in a hurry. Let's close things off before we get to your props with our favorite stack. I will start quickly, mentioned this before in the GPP quarterback part, but I love the thought going away from Dalvin. Give me Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. If the Lions can just keep this a little bit competitive, which is possible, then we could see Kirk Cousins pushing for 30, 40 pass attempts against a Lions defense. I don't think that's a shot in hell at stopping these receivers. And let's bring it all the way back with your guy, DeAndre Swift, who has 10-plus reception upside each and every week of the season. So I love that stack. Andrew, what about this Buccaneers-Dolphins game?
Yeah, so I'm going to do Tom Brady with Antonio Brown and Mike Evans. I'm actually going to go against Chris Godwin because I think that he will be the most chalky of the Tampa Bay wide receivers. So I'm going to get a little weird and go with Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans can beat Xavier Howard because I think Mike Evans is #good at football. So I'm gonna go with Mike Evans, and I'll even throw Leonard Fournette in there. I think that Fournette's evolved enough in the passing game where he's still going to be able to benefit in the matchup. And then I'll bring it back with the tight end I just talked about with Mike Gesicki for the Miami Dolphins. Again, he's basically like a wide receiver, but you get to play him at the tight end slot. So I think that's very advantageous for my roster.
Yeah, that makes sense with Gesicki. You could even get a little crazy and go with Waddle or Parker with Will Fuller out. It's tough, man, because as much as I do, Carlton Davis just got put on IR as well, but as much as I do see the Buccaneers, worst defense in the league and fantasy points per game to wide receivers, I'm just worried they shut this entire Dolphins offense like the hell down, because Dolphins haven't been able to protect Jacoby all season long. He's holding the ball too long. It's a combination of kind of being Jacoby's fault, also them having a bad offensive line. Buccaneers are 8th, I believe, in total pressures generated this year, so just a little worried about how that goes. But I think we're focusing on Tampa Bay side of things, running it back with just one Gesicki or Jalen Waddle. We get one of those 13, 15 target games from those guys. We are feeling awfully good about it. Now, I said it at the start of the show, but Andrew, you said to me 2 weeks ago, hey, I want to talk some props at the end of the podcast. I said, go off, King. You have returned a 5-1 record to the people through 2 weeks. What do you got on the agenda for this one?
Yeah, feeling good so far with these props. So I have two, and I'll throw in a bonus one. I didn't give it to you earlier, but it's one that I've been I like it. I like it a lot. So, okay, we'll go with Trey Lance under passing yards. His passing yards line currently is 225 passing yards. I'm going to take the under on that. I talked about it when we talked about Trey Lance as a DFS play. The Arizona Cardinals, I know we talk about them like not having a great defense.
No, they're good.
Great, yeah, but no, they are a good defense. They've been a really good pass defense so far this year. They've been really great in coverage. I know that their cornerbacks aren't necessarily household names, but they've been really good against the passing game, and it's really been rushing that has given them the most trouble. So I like Lance to run the football a lot, but not necessarily throw for a ton of yards. Again, I just think that this offense is always going to skew run heavy anyway, especially now that they have a mobile quarterback under center. It just kind of only makes sense. And Kyle Shanahan knows that the Cardinals defense is not good against run. So I don't think he's going to go out there and be like, all right, well, our rookie quarterback making his first start on the road, let's throw the ball. That doesn't make any sense going against the Cardinals defense that is ranks. What are their ranks? Yeah, they're up there in terms of the pass defense. And then for my over, I'm going to go with Damian Harris, over 59.5 rushing yards. I thought that was just really, really low based on the fact that they're playing the Texans defense. And yes, I did make this before I learned about a lot of the offensive line issues for the Patriots. So I don't love it as much, but it's still, the line has not moved since I made my first bet on it earlier in the week, and there's no going back now. So I'm going to take the over on the 59.5. Again, it's not that much, and anytime Damian Harris has seen double-digit carries so far this year and dating back to last year, he's smashed over 60 rushing yards because he's really efficient on the ground. So Damian Harris is my over there. And then my Galaxy Brain one, I don't feel nearly as confident about as the other two, is Laviska Shenault, over 2.5 rushing yards. So they talked about Darrell Bevel's been talking about using him more, just having an expanded role, and I assume, okay, I'm tying the knots together. All right, he has more rushing attempts. He has a rushing attempt in 2 of his 4 games this year, so it's a coin flip. But when he has rush for over 2.5 yards per carry. He's well above it. So Laviska Shenault He just needs 1 carry, and he'll hit over 2.5 yards. So that would be my Galaxy Brain prop bet, Laviska Shenault over 2.5 rushing yards. So hopefully they just give him a pitch the first play of the game. Like, all right, good to go.
I love betting the QB rushing yard props, and like you'll see a guy just like 3rd and 20 scramble for like 8 yards. You're just going crazy, and no one has any idea what the hell you're talking about. Well, people, big takeaway is that NFL Week 4 is in the books, which means PFF has data and grades for every single player who logged a snap last week. What can you get with the PFF subscription? Well, all of PFF's locked article content, PFF's NFL and college football betting dashboards, 0 to 100 grades of every single player, including top rookies on every team, a player prop tool which shows plus-minus value for every NFL prop, and more. So check out the highest graded players from Week 4 and look to find early value on spread picks and player props for Week 5. And also, we have DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, as a Week 5 offer for every football fan to jump on. New customers can bet just $1 on any NFL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores a point. Last time we had a 0-0 tie was in 1943. Seems like a safe bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF, though, and just $1 on any NFL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores a point. That's promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Min $1 wager required. Min $5 deposit, I should say. 1 per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also want to thank our sponsors over at Western Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow. Western Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you. Rest assured on game day, team up to identify your needs and address your goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com. And also, it's football season. You know what that means? It means we're going for 2 here with the sponsor of today's show, Manscaped. Blitzing through hairs has never been easier, and it's time for you to join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code PFF at manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping. It's 3 and out the window with all of the trimmers. Now go tame that Wildcat offense. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code PFF. Andrew, we have completed our 5th edition of the DFS show. I believe you said your DFS cheat sheet is live or it's out Friday. Let the people know what else you got at PFF.com.
Yes, DFS cheat sheet is live. Got the PFF stardom sim. I hit on a couple Thursday night players, so read that and you can. It's my version of my victory laps on Friday morning, so you can check that out. But help you set your lineup for Sunday's matchups. Again, remember we have an early game, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, Falcons and Jets. And yeah, tons of stuff. A new article came out this week just kind of talking about routes run per dropback, looking more at players and seeing, differences and not necessarily looking at, how many routes did this X player run, but the percentage of routes run per dropback. And then basically looking at who had the biggest increases from week over week. So who actually saw bigger roles, were the targets that they saw, the more targets they saw, a result of just variance or because they actually played more and they were running more routes. So kind of put some context behind, I think an example is like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like he saw his targets go up significantly. It's like, oh, was that just a fluke? Oh, well, no, he doubled his routes run rate. So, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. So, yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown's kind of sneaky as that Lions bring back. I know, Ian, you went chalk when you bring back Swift, but it was like, hey, Amon-Ra St. Brown could be the sneaky bring back piece for the Detroit Lions.
Could be that guy, pal. It's just, it's a shot in the dark with these guys. It could be him. It could be Quintez Cephas. It could be Khalif Raymond, who should have had 3 touchdowns last week. He had 2 as it was, and Goff missed him on another one. So that's fine. Throw a dart at it. If you're a big tournament, go get her making 100 lineups. Absolutely makes sense to me. You can check out my 4 weekly articles, quarterback predictions for the next week, running back breakdown of all 32 teams, every single wide receiver, cornerback, room, and matchup discussed, plus some tight end analysis. And then my baby, the Mismatch Manifesto, which is always free, includes this week, I believe, 46 notes, 46 of my favorite blurbs from around the week, and then also just a bunch of cool matchup analysis that might point you in the right direction when trying to do some of this DFS goodness. So for Andrew, I'm Ian. Thank you as always for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.